Okay, so let's talk about compensation now. FMLA leave is generally unpaid. We obviously know that. You, though, have a right to require the substitution of paid leave, and the employee has the right to require you to substitute paid leave for otherwise unpaid FMLA leave, except in two cases. You know, if they're getting workers' comp benefits or they're getting the state disability or other long-term disability benefits, then you cannot force them to use their vacation or sick leave. Likewise, they cannot force you to allow them to use their vacation or sick leave if they're getting those other kind of benefits. That's got to be by mutual agreement. But in the absence of them receiving some workers' comp or disability benefits, the general rule is FMLA is unpaid, but they can substitute or you can force them to substitute. If it is unpaid, employers, of course, are mindful of the salary basis test for classifying as a requirement, right? You can't deduct from wages under most circumstances or you risk losing an exemption. But the FMLA deals with that in a regulation that says, from 1993, that salaried executive, administrative, professional, or computer employees that are given unpaid FMLA leave during a work week do not lose the FLSA exemption, even though they're obviously not being paid the same salary regardless of the number of hours worked. Now, that regulation was written in 1993. In 2004, the DOL updated the FLSA. You may all remember, you probably went to seminars when the FLSA was updated. And even though the FMLA has been updated since then, the FMLA didn't change anything with respect to this regulation. There was a new exemption created for highly compensated employees. Do any of you use that exemption? None of you do? It's not uncommon to use when you can't meet the primary duty test for executive, administrative, or managerial, but they perform some regular administrative or executive duties, even if it's not their primary duty. There's this exemption for highly compensated employees, and this regulation doesn't seem to afford that opportunity. If you have other kinds of exemptions from overtime that require a salary, motor carrier exemptions, you have other exemptions, you know, they won't work for this. This only works for those particular exemptions. Salary deductions can be made for these. Now, make sure you're complying with any state requirements. California has a much more strict rule with respect to the salary basis for employees, but even California allows the deduction for intermittent leave or reduced leave schedule in cases of taking FMLA or California leave. So what can you do then when you're dealing with an exempt employee who is taking intermittent leave or working with his schedule? Well, you can convert them to an hourly employee during the FMLA period, or you can make appropriate adjustments to their salary on the basis of their regular work week and their hourly rate. So in other words, you can start tracking exempt employee time and pay them by an hourly rate. If you do that and they work overtime, obviously you would have to pay overtime. Or you can agree with the employee in what their normal schedule is, or the average hours worked each week, and reach the agreement in writing. So this is your question. So you sit down with an exempt employee and say, okay, we don't track your hours. Some weeks you work 30, some weeks you work 50, some weeks you work 40. So and regular business hours are 40 hours. So we're just going to assume that your work week is 40, and you've told us you're going to take 2 days off a week. So we'll just assume that that's 8 hours a day, each day, and therefore we're going to reduce your compensation by 2.